Have you ever noticed that the more a system starts to fail, the more secret plans the government seems to produce? It's as if they think that if they just write enough pages, the reality on the ground will somehow fix itself. Look at this report, for example, from the Wall Street Journal last November. It details a secret meeting that took place early in 2023. 12 senior officers gathered at the Julius Leber Barrack in Berlin for one reason: to draft OPLAN. I'm going to read you exactly what they uncovered here. This 1,200-page blueprint for a full-scale war with Russia. It describes in painstaking details how up to 800,000 NATO soldiers, including Americans and Germans, would be funneled through Germany to the Eastern Front the moment the first shot is fired. For a long time, the war clock in Berlin was set to 2029. But after Russia started violating European airspace last September, which you can find all of the details of that episode in the description, that clock just sped up. There is a firm conviction that now Europe is Putin's next target after Ukraine. But here's the paradox. You can have 1,200 pages of logistical genius, you can map out every fuel stop for 800,000 men, but any plan is useless if you don't have the actual soldiers to execute it. And right now, Germany's paper fortress is missing its foundation. Let's look at the man trying to sell his plan. In May 2025, Chancellor Friedrich Merz stood before the parliament and made a vow that would make a Prussian general blush. He stated, and I quote, "Developing the armed forces is a top priority. The German army must become the strongest conventional army in Europe." It's a bold ambition, bro. But when you look at the math, you realize it's actually a math problem masquerading as a military goal. Let's check the receipts. To meet NATO's requirements, Germany needs a total of 460,000 personnel by 2035. But look at where they are today. 182,000 people. That's a gap of 278,000 soldiers. That isn't just a minor deficit, that's a ghost army. And the problem isn't just that they can't find new people, it's that they can't even keep the ones they have. Because according to the Financial Times, the army is struggling to get Gen Z recruits ready for war. Or as I would like to say, the German army is suffering a leaky bucket syndrome. Because out of the roughly 18,800 recent recruits, over a quarter quit within the first 6 months. Commanders might call this generation vulnerable, they cry easily, and they talk about work-life balance. The data suggests something else. A complete lack of trust in a system that's asking them to fill a gap that shouldn't exist in the first place. So, what's happening with the German army? Why are they this far behind? Why can't they keep their recruits? Who to blame? What has the government done to fix it? How did Gen Z react? And why Russia is extremely excited about this? This is what we will discuss together in today's episode. I am your host and this is the Intel Runner Plus. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It costs you nothing but helps us a lot, and let's dive in. Now, if you want to understand how a global superpower ends up with a ghost army, you have to look at the person who spent 16 years telling everyone there was nothing to worry about. In late 2024, Angela Merkel released her memoirs. Her stance, she essentially claimed she made no mistake. But the research tells a much colder story. While she was shaking hands and maintaining the status quo, she was quietly dismantling Germany's ability to defend itself. She slashed the army from 250,000 to 180,000 soldiers. Why? To save 8.3 billion euros. She traded national security for cheap Russian energy and the comfort of an American security umbrella that she assumed just would never fold. And this is where it gets savage. Maria Schmidt, a prominent historian, didn't hold back. She described Merkel as the gravedigger of Germany and Europe. She argues that Merkel left Germany and Europe in worse shape than it was when she entered office. The problem is simply she brought down the biggest and richest country in Europe, leaving the whole whole continent vulnerable. She acted against the German army, and in the process, she eviscerated it. She abolished universal conscription and reduced the armament and equipment of the troops to the point of absurdity. The holiday from history is now over, with Trump, the man many call the executioner of Europe, threatening to walk away from NATO. That 8.3 billion in savings is starting to look like the most expensive mistake in German history. But here's where it gets personal, because a plan, even a 1,200-page one, isn't just a document. It's a demand. It's a demand on the youth to step up and potentially die for a system they didn't really build. And their response, it's a categorical no. According to the Institute of General Research, and look at this number carefully, 81%, a staggering 81% of German Gen Z youth say they refuse to participate in a war for Germany. That is absolutely crazy. What kind of a government is this that 81% of its generation doesn't want to defend the country? Because look, I understand that there are young people who are against wars to begin with. I also understand when a portion of your citizens do not approve of your policies. That is how democracy works, yeah? But 81%, bro, you have messed up so badly. The generals can call this weakness. But if you look at the research, the youth call it something else, untrustworthy. This isn't just apathy, it's a calculated decision. They feel like they're being asked to be a cannon fodder for a system that has already failed them economically. They are the first generation to expect to be poorer than their parents. They don't trust the leaders writing the checks. If you expect to be poorer than your parents and you don't trust your leaders, why would you die for a 1,200-page document written by 12 guys in barracks? And no one has said it better than this young man to Sky News. None of us want to die for a country that doesn't really care about us. It's why 1 out of 4 new recruits quit within the first 6 months. You can't draft a heart that's not in it. And as we're about to see in the next section, the government is getting so desperate they've started trying to buy that loyalty with a checkbook. So, Berlin has a 1,200-page plan and a generation that isn't answering. What do you do when patriotism fails? Well, if you're the German parliament, you try to buy it. On December 5th, 2025, they approved a new law that's essentially a multi-billion euro gamble. They are raising recruit pay to 2,600 euros per month. It's a massive salary jump, and the goal is simple: turn the military into a career choice that's too lucrative to ignore. But if you look at the fine print, you'll see where the politeness ends and the pressure begins. German DW unpacked the law. Starting in 2026, the army isn't just waiting for you to call them. No, they're coming for you. The Military Service Modernization Act, that's the name of the law. For now, it's a compromise, because at least for the time being, military service remains voluntary. But at the same time, all 18-year-olds will have new obligations. What obligations do you ask of 18-year-olds? Well, starting this month, January 2026, every male will receive a mandatory questionnaire that they must fill out. The questionnaire will ask about their willingness to serve in the army, their physical fitness, and their education. For women, answering the questions is voluntary because they cannot be required by law to serve in the army. In 2027, the process will take a step further. All men born in 2008 or later will have to appear at an appointed time for a fitness test. The results of that test will be used to determine, in the event of a conflict, who would be drafted. The government calls this incentivized volunteering, but the youth on the streets are calling it what it actually is: a prelude to the return of compulsory conscription. It's a shadowed draft. They're building the infrastructure for a forced army, just in case the 2,600 euro bribe doesn't work. So let's take a second to look at the board we've just built, because the picture it paints, well, it's uncomfortable. we have unpacked the 1,200-page OPLAN, a logistical masterpiece that, on paper, is ready for World War III, but in reality is missing the most important component, the people. We've seen the grand ambition of 460,000 personnel contrasted with the staggering 182,000 they actually have today. We've unpacked the leaky bucket problem, where 25% of new recruits don't even stay past 6 months. And we heard what the commanders think, that this generation is just too weak for the job. But we also dug up the root cause, Angela Merkel's 16-year holiday from history that sold off German security for a few billion euros in savings. And then, the most human part of the story, that 81% of poor Gen Z Germans who are flat out refusing to fight for a country they feel has already checked out on them. And finally, we looked at the December 5th law, a 2,600 euro bribe that is clearly just a prelude to the return of mandatory conscription. Let's now look at the most staggering number, the one that literally keeps the leadership in Berlin scared to death. While Germany is debating questionnaires and salary bumps, their adversary isn't having a recruitment crisis. Russia currently maintains 1.33 million active soldiers and 2 million in reserve. They aren't asking for willingness, they are a mobilization machine. If a peace deal happens in Ukraine, especially with Trump's pressure, it might just give Russia the time to reorganize and look toward a defenseless Europe. So, here's the question for today. If a liberal democracy can't convince its own youth that it's worth defending, does that democracy even exist anymore? Or is the 1,200-page OPLAN just the world's most expensive piece of fiction? And finally, let me know, if you were 18 and that mandatory letter landed on your desk, would the 2,600 euros be enough? I'll be in the comments. This is the Interrunner Plus. Stay skeptical, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.